It's Thursday, January 15th, 2026. A sudden about-face on Iran or the beginning of the end. Turns out SUVs really are deadly weapons. And is the economy better 1 year into the second Trump administration? I asked you next on the AM Update. Well, this was a surprise at the White House yesterday. President Trump made these comments about what's going on, the current state of play with Iran.
We have been notified and pretty strongly, but we'll find out what that all means. But we've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset, including you will be very upset. But that's just gotten to me, some information that the killing has stopped, that the executions have stopped. They're not going to have an execution, which a lot of people were talking about for the last couple of days. Today was going to be the day of execution.
Trump made those comments yesterday. What in the world? That is obviously at least obvious as it can get from a country that's gone dark for much of the last week. Seemingly not at all what's happening on the ground. But again, it's hard to verify anything and everything coming out of the country of Iran. Its foreign minister spoke to Bret Baier on Fox News yesterday and issued a warning for Trump.
And now, after 3 days of terrorist operation, now there is a calm. We are in full control, and let's, hope that wisdom would prevail, and we don't go for a high level of tension, which could be disastrous for everybody.
So there is Iran's foreign minister also adding that President Trump should not make the same mistake he made in June. What he's referring to, he also went on to say, yeah, you destroyed all of our nuclear facilities. Yeah, you destroyed everything that we had been building for years and years and years. But you can't destroy the technology, so therefore you made a mistake. I've also seen it reported that indeed, after threats from Trump that he would retaliate or he would get involved if there were public executions, Iran did indeed step down. Now, if that is true, and I have my doubts as to whether it's actually true, but if it is true that the impetus for Iran not following through with public executions, which they were rumored / reported to have been embarking on for those who had been caught up in this but not actually killed yet, and they decided to acquiesce, that means it is confirmed this is the weakest point of the Iranian regime. And here's why. If you are sentenced to hanging, which is what was rumored to be happening to some of these prisoners, if you are sentenced to hanging, that means you are found guilty of a crime against Allah. And when the Iranian Islamic Republic decides that, I guess maybe we can bend the law of Allah to the United States, that is a show of weakness. Now, I have my doubts whether or not that's actually happening. I'm not convinced this is anywhere near over, but that was just a bizarre turn of events yesterday. The foreign minister of Iran granting an interview to Fox News, and President Trump saying from the Oval Office, hey, we have a pretty good report, the killing has stopped. That's just bizarre. Bizarre based on what we've seen, or at least what we think we've seen out of Iran the past couple of weeks. The FBI searched the home of a Washington Post reporter, reportedly seizing a couple of her electronic devices. The news outlet claimed that federal agents on Wednesday morning searched the home of Hannah Natanzan, a Washington, D.C. based reporter. Natanzan had been responsible for high-profile and sensitive coverage of the federal government during the first year of the President Trump's administration, his second term, of course. The FBI reportedly searched Tanzan's electronic devices, seizing her phone and Garmin watch. The Post alleged that the recent raid was part of an ongoing investigation into Aurelio Perez Lugones, a government contractor. Perez Lugones, a Maryland resident, is accused of unlawfully retaining national defense information, according to court records. He previously served in the U.S. Navy and held a top-secret security clearance. FBI and DOJ say he's behind bars now. When I saw this story come across yesterday morning, I got my hopes up. I thought finally the Trump administration was starting to arrest journalists. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent who fatally shot Renee Goode last week in Minneapolis has been named as Jonathan Ross, and he suffered internal bleeding to the torso following the incident. That's according to numerous outlets, including CBS News, who to my eye was the first to report. It's unclear how extensive the bleeding was. So, surprise, surprise, SUVs are indeed deadly weapons. Renee Goode's former father-in-law says he doesn't blame ICE for her death. He actually quotes scripture here in this interview with CNN.
I want to ask you about this. When you talk about the confusion, and you've been open, obviously, about your support for the president, when you look at the videos of what happened, and I'm sure they're very hard for you, Timmy, to watch if you've even been able to, but the Deputy Attorney General says that the Justice Department doesn't believe that there's evidence to back a criminal investigation, right? And nothing about charges or anything like that, just an investigation into what happened in terms of the ICE agents' actions. But they were, according to the prosecutors resigning today, pressuring them to investigate Renee's actions and Becca, her wife's actions. How do you feel about all that?
Well, I'm not blaming anybody. I mean, it's a hard situation all the way around. It's hard for for everybody involved. I mean, the ICE agent, at first I didn't see the footage where, he was actually, he was actually being ran. I mean, I seen the bump of the car hitting his legs. And so in a flash like that, it's hard to say how you would react. From my understanding that he had been through that before, maybe dragged or something. And so, like I said, it's just a hard situation for everybody. Becca, she's a great person as well. I mean, I don't have any enemies. I love everybody. And that's what the Bible tells us, love our neighbors as we love ourselves. But, I think there's some bad choices. And the word says, for the wrath of God will come up on the children of disobedience. And, it's I don't blame ICE. I don't blame Rebecca. I don't blame Renee. I just wish that, if we're walking the Spirit of God, I don't think she would have been there.
That is Timmy Macklin, Renee Goode's former father-in-law, reacting to the news of her death and the aftermath of her death at the hands of an ICE agent after she tried to run him over. What a tremendous witness there. It was very matter of fact and not over the top at all, gratuitously, just calmly stating the facts. It's a hard situation. That's true. I don't blame the ICE officer. I don't blame my former daughter-in-law. But if she had made better choices, she probably wouldn't have been in that situation. Border Czar Tom Homan provided an update on the number of deportations now 1 year into the Trump administration, number 2.
Well, as far as the self-deportations, ones left unknown, I don't have that data, but I can tell you we're about 650 to 660 actual deportation. We actually put hands on somebody and removed them. And the latest number I've seen, about 70% of everybody we're arresting are criminals. So, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of criminal, public safety threat, illegal aliens that we have deported. Actually arrested and deported. So, of course, every criminal alien, public safety threat we take off the street makes the community much safer. So President Trump's keeping his promise to American people, making this country safe again.
There is Border Czar Tom Homan saying 660,000 actual deportations. I don't think that includes self-deportations in 1 year into the new Trump administration. Quickly this before the break. Oh, she's back. Oprah Winfrey went on, I'm guessing you can guess, The View to talk about the true cause, the secret of obesity.
All these years, I thought I was overeating. I was standing there with all the food noise, what I ate, what I should eat, how many calories was that, how long is it going to take. I thought that was because of me and my fault. Yeah. Now I understand that if you carry the obesity gene, if that is what you have, that is what makes you overeat. You don't overeat and become obese. Right. Obesity causes you to overeat. Right. Obesity causes you to have all of that food noise. And what the GLP-1s have done for me, and I know a number of other people, is to quiet that noise. Yeah.
Okay. Quote, you don't overeat and become obese. Obesity causes you to overeat. You don't murder somebody and become a serial killer. You're a serial killer because you murdered someone. I mean, it's not morally equivalent. Maybe that's a bad example. Not morally equivalent at all. But the logic there doesn't really hold. Having said that, in limited cases with a change in lifestyle, I do kind of like what I've seen from GLP-1s. Again, has to be a change in lifestyle first and foremost. But I think those GLP-1s like Ozempic, they can maybe be a gateway, a ramp into a better lifestyle and weight loss. When we come back, more tards on parade in Washington, D.C., which I understand is another day that ends in Y. Also, did HHS actually resume funding for Planned Parenthood ever under everybody's noses? President Trump reacts, as well as some other news that's coming up next.
It's being reported that Health and Human Services released frozen funds to Planned Parenthood. I'm wondering why this happened and why Planned Parenthood is receiving any federal funds.
I don't know anything about that. Bobby, do you know anything about that?
What was the question?
It's being reported that frozen funds were released to Planned Parenthood in December by HHS. I'm wondering why that happened.
I have
not heard of that.
So there is RFK Jr. and President Trump both reacting to the story from Politico, is who first reported this yesterday, that Planned Parenthood dropped their lawsuit against the federal government because back late last year, HHS actually resumed funding for certain things to the baby-killing kingpin known as Planned Parenthood. So somebody's wrong here. If HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy doesn't know, President Trump doesn't know anything about this, and yet Politico is reporting that Planned Parenthood dropped their suit because they got what they wanted from HHS, something is amiss, something to keep an eye on. Tards on parade in Washington, D.C. We heard that ACLU attorney attempting to argue with Samuel Alito yesterday. How about this woman? This is Dr. Nisha Verma on the topic of gender and sexuality. Here's Senator Josh Hawley in his line of questioning during a Senate hearing.
Dr. Verma, I wasn't sure I understood your answer to Senator Moody a moment ago. Do you think that men can get pregnant?
I hesitated there because I wasn't sure where the conversation was going or what the goal was. I mean, I do take care of patients with different identities. I take care of many women. I take care of people with different identities. And so that's where I paused. I think, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Well, the goal is just the truth. So can men get pregnant?
Again, the reason I paused there is I'm not really sure what the goal of the question.
The goal is just to establish a biological reality. You just said a moment ago that science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So let's just test that proposition. Can men get pregnant?
I take care of people with many identities, but
can men get pregnant?
There are many women that can get pregnant. I do take care of people that don't identify as women.
Can men get pregnant?
Again, as I'm saying,
let me just remind you what you testified to a moment ago. Science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So, can men get pregnant? You're a doctor, I think.
Science and evidence should guide medicine.
Do science and evidence tell us that men can get pregnant? Biological men, can they get pregnant?
I also think yes/no questions like this are a political tool.
No, yes/no questions are about the truth, doctor. Let's not make a mockery of this proceeding. This is about science and evidence, and I'm asking you. You know, the United States Supreme Court just heard arguments yesterday at great length on this question. This is not a hypothetical question. This is not theoretical. It affects real people in their real lives. And you're here as an expert, called by the other side as an expert. And you've been telling us that you follow, right, you're a doctor, and you follow the science and the evidence. So I just want to know, based on the science, can men get pregnant? That's a yes or no question. It really is, I think.
I think you're trying to reduce the complexity.
So that was 120 seconds there. That clip goes on for another 3 minutes. Some rando doctor called up as a witness in a Senate hearing just could not answer the question. And Senator Hawley didn't even actually make it that difficult. She could have said yes, no, men cannot get pregnant. No, men cannot get pregnant. She could have said that and still kowtow to the rainbow jihad by saying, of course, you didn't ask me if we were talking about trans men, whatever, which don't exist. I'm just using that as an example. It's just total madness, total Romans 1 madness. Just insane. And yet we have 2 days in a row now, people getting up in front of the highest court in the land, one of the highest governing bodies in the land, and completely face-planting, making a mockery of themselves, making a laughingstock of themselves over this same issue. It's incredible. What about this from CNBC? According to reporter Kelly Evans, the deficit shrunk. Yes, that is a real thing. Maybe words you thought would never be uttered again in your life. The deficit shrunk. The deficit was stuck around $2.1 trillion on a rolling 12-month basis, or 7.3% of GDP. And the 10-year Treasury yield was stuck above 4.7%, worsening the situation daily. Now, we are experiencing a dramatic improvement. For the first 3 months of the fiscal year, October through December, the deficit was down $109 billion, or 15% from a year earlier. Tariff revenues, or custom receipts, are a big part of that, hitting $90 billion from $20 billion the year prior. Now, CNBC reporter Kelly Evans goes on to say that there could be some mitigating factors here, but it shows that, at least for now, tariffs could be a tool if they don't tank things, as some critics have stipulated. And now here's this. Peter Navarro, he's an economic advisor, a trade advisor for President Trump, went on Fox Business the other day to continue to make the case for and lay out the Trump economic agenda.
So housing, what we're doing, Charles, is we're taking a micro approach to macro problems like housing, for example. So just in the last week, he directed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to spend $200 billion buying mortgage-backed securities. So what is that going to do? That's probably worth $0.25 to $0.5 point on lower mortgage rates, a couple of $100 for the average mortgage holder a month. Then you've got a ban coming on institutional investors, hedge funds et al., buying single-family homes. There's really good data on this, Charles, that when you let these hedge funds go in and buy like that, it dramatically drives up rents. So we're tackling that. The president's also looking at using retirement accounts penalty-free as down payments, and buried the lead. One of the biggest drivers, Charles, of rents, higher rents in this country, is the 20 million illegal aliens that came in during 4 years of Joe Biden. It's 1 million illegals, 1% increase in rent. That's a 20% national increase, but it's clustered in the blue cities and blue states like New York. And ironically, we get the Mondamis of this world then calling for socialist measures to solve a problem they created. If you go over to energy, I mean, look, Biden, $75 a barrel, we're down to towards 50. And I've got a piece coming out in Fox Business tomorrow morning that explains why the purchase of Venezuelan heavy crude oil will help reduce the price of gasoline and diesel here. Why? Because our refineries are all custom built based on the type of oil they were expecting to use. When fracking came along, it upset that balance because fracking's got a lot more light crude. So by using heavier crude mixed in with a lighter crude, that's going to help things. Credit card cap, 10%. I mean, the mafia can't get as much interest rates on the VIG as MasterCard and Visa. It's just crazy.
So there's trade advisor, economic advisor for President Trump, Peter Navarro. Just listing 3 examples of part of President Trump's economic agenda in the new year. Housing, I'm pretty much tracking with everything he's saying there. Oil, hopefully that picks up as soon as possible, and why that could be a good thing for the United States. Capping interest rate on credit card, price control. I'm sorry, capping it. Are we doing price controls on credit cards now? Because that's kind of what it sounds like to me. So there's 3 things. Yet at the same time, according to the government's own data, consumer price index for a number of really crucial categories for the everyday family economy, sorry for the redundancy, compared to 5 years ago, Prices are still up astronomically. New cars up 20%, health insurance 26%, electricity 37%. Home prices, of course, 43% up from 5 years ago. Auto insurance up 64%. Ridiculous. Ground beef 70%. And I looked this up despite the fact that the price of eggs has fallen precipitously in the last 2 years from some of their ridiculous highs. And I'm very thankful for that. And I think the Trump administration gets credit for that. The price of a dozen eggs still 83% higher now, at least in December, than they were 5 years ago. So it's against that backdrop. I'm really curious what you have to say. For our poll of the week, I asked you, is the economy better now than it was a year ago? I gave you 3 options and the ability, of course, as always, to comment. Gave you 3 options, yes, no, yes, but not for me, and, of course, commenting below. And third place is, yes, the economy is better, but not for me. So far, that's how I voted, but I'm in a unique situation. I think it's gradually getting better, 14.5%. No is in second place at 22.3%. And yes, an emphatic first place with 60.1% saying yes, the economy is better now than it was a year ago. A slight theme will start here with Rick, who says, with a discount through Walmart, I just paid $2.64 a gallon for unleaded. Thanksgiving turkey was about 85 cents a pound. Things are moving in the right direction, but a little patience is needed to see the total results of Trump's current economic policies. It's really hard to deny the gas price thing. Really hard to deny that. I saw one of our local media outlets where I live in Iowa trying to say, oh, gas prices keep rising. Yeah, for like a week. They were like $2.50 last week. Now it's $2.60. Nobody's complaining about that. It's really hard to ignore the gas price thing. So that's something that we do need to be thankful for sure. Let's go to ID Crisis, who says, Josh Shapiro is my governor. I have a fairly decent job and a side business. I try very hard not to let fluctuations in the economy be felt by my family, but I can say that for the first time since COVID, I paid less than $60 to fill a Nissan Frontier from empty to full 2 days ago. Same thing, just filled up our Ascent. Their Subaru Ascent. Yes, we drive Subarus in my family. Filled up the Ascent a couple of days ago, less than $50. Or maybe it was right around $50. Jay Breezy says, I said no. I think it's about the same. Sure, gas in my area is down a quarter, but the one thing I'm focused on is buying a house. The prices with interest rates are still demoralizing. You bet they are, Jay Breezy. You bet they are. And something's going to have to pop. They can only stave this off for so long. You're just trying to fight you're trying to use unnatural methods to fight natural economic forces and the market. And you can only stave that off for so long. I don't know who's going to bear the brunt of this, but the home price bubble has to pop at some point. I keep saying that. I've said that for 6 months. Tom says, improving, however, food costs and energy costs need to be added to the CPI. Don't disagree with that. Rhino Hunter says, of course it isn't. They're still leaving out the data. And Matthew says, posts a screenshot. I think he was the first vote on this poll. And he voted, yes, the economy is better. And he says, unanimous agreement. Glad that's settled. Of course, the counter on X, given that he was the only vote at that point, gave 100% yes, the economy is better. Hope you have a wonderful Thursday. Back again tomorrow with Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want, tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM update that I didn't get to. Make your submissions. Look for the pin post on X at RealAMUpdate. Catch you again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.